It was 8:12 on a Thursday morning when I noticed the Porsche keys were gone. Not misplaced, gone. The hook on the wall where they always hung was empty, and the space felt like a missing tooth in a smile that used to be whole. At first I thought maybe I'd left them in my coat pocket. Or maybe my daughter, Emily, had borrowed the car and forgotten to mention it again. That wouldn't be unusual. But the purse sitting half open on the counter told a different story. My wallet was there, thinner than it had been last night. My visa was missing. I didn't panic. Not yet. I just stood there, coffee cup in hand, listening to the steady tick of the kitchen clock. I could smell the faint bitterness of the old grounds in the machine, mixed with the lavender candle I'd lit the night before. The house was too quiet. It was the kind of silence that feels staged, like everyone had left in a hurry, pretending it was normal. Then I noticed the printed receipt by the sink, hotel logo, check-in date, Ocean View Deluxe Suite. I blinked. The name on the line said E. Morrison. My daughter's name. My card number. My signature forged in her messy, half-hearted scrawl. That's when the truth hit. They were gone. Emily and my sister Sandra. My car, my credit, my trust, all rolled into their idea of a family girl's getaway. I sat down at the table, set my cup aside, and just looked at the receipt for a long minute. The paper trembled, but my hands didn't. I'd been through worse storms in 66 years. Losing a husband, surviving layoffs, paying off a mortgage alone. This was just another betrayal dressed in family colors. So it stung. The phone rang, slicing through the quiet. I glanced at the caller ID, Sandra. "Morning, sis," she sang out. The sound of wind in the background, car windows down, laughter echoing behind her. "Guess where we are?" I didn't answer. Just listened. "The beach. Emily said you wouldn't mind us borrowing the car for a few days. We're taking a break, for our mental health." I let her talk. I could hear the clinking of coffee cups, the distant horn of traffic. She was giddy, the kind of giddy that comes with spending someone else's money. "I hope you're not too mad," she added, voice suddenly cautious. "We'll bring it back spotless. Promise." My voice came out calm, even too calm maybe. "Of course. Enjoy yourselves." She paused. "Really? You're not upset?" I smiled into the receiver. "Not at all. You ladies deserve a break." The moment I hung up, I opened my laptop. My fingers didn't hesitate as I logged into my bank account. Years of balancing checkbooks had made me efficient. The pending transaction blinked up at me like a confession. $12,472.85. Ocean View Resort and Spa. I stared at that number and felt something cold, steady, and utterly clear take root inside me. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought being quiet meant being weak. But I'd been saving something, not just money but information. I still had joint account access from when Emily needed help refinancing her car loan last year. I never said I removed myself from it. And I knew her passwords better than she did. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The morning sun had risen high, dusting the empty driveway in gold. The car was gone, yes, but I still held the steering wheel. By late afternoon, the evidence had piled up like breadcrumbs. A string of text alerts showed restaurant charges. Ocean Grill, gift boutique, massage package. Every ping on my phone was another reminder that they were spending freely, assuming I'd never dare to stop them. So I did what I always do when I need to think. I baked. The rhythm of it, measuring sugar, cracking eggs, folding the batter, steadied me. It's something my mother used to say, you can't think straight on an empty stomach. As the pound cake baked, the scent filled the house, buttery and warm. I remembered the times Emily used to help me in the same kitchen, standing on a chair to stir the bowl. She'd always say, "Mom, one day I'll take care of you the way you take care of me." Funny how promises age faster than people. The oven timer timed. I took out the cake, set it on the rack to cool, and sat back down at the table. The light was shifting, late-day gold slanting through the blinds, slicing across the countertop where the empty key hook still hung. That's when I noticed another small clue. A sticky note by the phone, written in my daughter's handwriting. "Be back Monday. Don't worry, love you, E." Don't worry. It's always the people who say that who give you the most reason to. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and watched the news, background noise to my thoughts. Around 6, I decided to check social media. I'm not much for it, but sometimes I look at pictures of old friends or recipes. That's when I saw it. Emily had posted a photo. My car parked near the boardwalk, the ocean behind it. She was in sunglasses, drink in hand, her caption. Finally taking time for me. Hashtag self-care, hashtag beach life. In the corner of the image you could see my credit card on the table beside her plate. Bold, unmistakable. The gold visa I worked 30 years to earn. I zoomed in, stared for a moment, then closed the app. My hands were steady again. My heartbeat had slowed. I didn't text her. Didn't call. I just opened my planner, flipped to Monday, and wrote in neat, cursive letters. Let them learn. Then I drew a small star beside it. The same kind my husband used to draw next to bills he'd already paid. A quiet sign between us that something was handled. Around 8:30 the landline rang again. I almost didn't answer, but habit made me lift the receiver. It was Mr. Jenkins from down the street. He needed help setting up his new lawnmower. Small talk, neighborly comfort. I helped him as best I could, listening to the hum of his gratitude. Afterward, as I hung up, I felt the first real calm of the day settle in. I'd always been the one to fix things, to patch holes, smooth arguments, make excuses. But this time I wasn't going to fix a thing. I was going to watch. Still, before bed I made a note, a reminder of the one advantage they didn't know I had. A savings account separate from everything else. The one with my maiden name untouched for years. The one they'd never find. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about what it represented. Control. Freedom. A quiet promise to myself that no one, not even family, would leave me powerless again. The next morning dawned clear and sharp. Birds outside, sunlight on the curtains, a cool breeze from the cracked window. I made breakfast for one: eggs, toast, black coffee. The house was still empty but not lonely anymore. By habit I opened my email. The subject line stopped me cold. Confirmation. Ocean View Resort. Payment declined. I hadn't done it yet. The bank must have flagged it automatically. Maybe the handwriting didn't match. Maybe it was fate's way of saying go ahead. I clicked the message, read the polite apology, and smiled. There it was, the opening I needed. They were out there right now, sipping cocktails, completely unaware that their little joyride was about to turn into a lesson. I pictured it. The front desk clerk frowning, the awkward glances, the rising panic when the card didn't go through. And for the first time in a long time I felt something close to satisfaction. That evening, just as the sky turned lavender, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was Emily. Mom, did you cancel your card? They said the payment didn't go through. Please call me. It's embarrassing. A few seconds later, another one. Mom, this isn't funny. We can't even get gas money to come home. I stared at the screen, feeling that calm again. The one that sits heavy but steady in your chest when you finally stop being afraid of confrontation. Then the landline rang again. This time I answered. Her voice cracked through the receiver. Mom, please tell me you didn't do this. I didn't speak at first. The silence stretched. I could hear the noise behind her. People talking, a baby crying, the distant clang of the hotel lobby bell. Finally I said, you took my card. My core. My dignity. Mom, it wasn't like that. Then tell me, I said softly, what was it like? She started to speak but the words faltered. Somewhere in the background I heard Sandra muttering something about misunderstanding. I let the silence do its work. Sometimes quiet is louder than shouting. Finally, Emily whispered, we'll explain when we get back. I looked out the window, the sky turning dark, the wind brushing through the pines. I'll be here, I said. But remember, explanations don't undo choices. Then I hung up. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. The house was silent, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. And tomorrow they'd find out exactly what that meant. I sat there a long while after hanging up, the phone still warm in my hand. The silence that followed was heavy, almost tender, like the air after a storm when everything feels cleaner, sharper. Outside, the streetlight buzzed softly and a dog barked down the block. It was one of those in-between nights where the world feels suspended, as if it's waiting to see what you'll do next. I didn't rush. I've learned that at my age, decisions made in haste usually come with regrets. So I poured myself another cup of coffee and opened the curtains just enough to watch the wind dance through the pines. Somewhere out there, my daughter and sister were panicking. I could picture them. Messy hair, raised voices, their little bubble of entitlement beginning to pop. But me. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns hot and fades fast. What I felt was cooler. Cleaner. It was something closer to resolve. The next morning I woke before dawn, years of early rising from my old teaching days still in me. The house was wrapped in that bluish-gray light that always comes before sunrise. I brewed a pot of coffee and stood at the kitchen window, watching dew gather on the railing. My phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls from Emily. 1 from Sandra. A text from an unknown number that read, "Please contact Ocean View Resort regarding your payment." I set the phone face down. Let them wait. Instead, I opened the mail that had piled up on the counter. Utility bills, a coupon booklet, a postcard from my neighbor's grandkids in Florida. Normal life still moving on without pause. It was almost funny how betrayal can shake your world but leave the rest of it untouched. The refrigerator still hums. The mail still comes. By 8 I finally called the bank. The woman on the other end had a gentle voice. "Yes, ma'am, we see the charge attempt from Ocean View Resort. We've placed it on hold pending authorization." I smiled faintly. "Good. Please keep it that way." "Of course," she said, hesitating slightly. "Would you like to report it as unauthorized?" "Yes," I said and paused. Because that's exactly what it was. When I hung up, I made myself some toast and turned on the radio. Oldie's soft background hum kept the kitchen from feeling too quiet. I thought of how many mornings I'd spent like this over the years. Raising kids, managing bills, keeping peace. Always fixing. Always smoothing things over. Not this time. Around noon the phone rang again. I knew before looking who it was. "Mom," Emily's voice broke through the line, small and shaky. "They said the card's been canceled. We can't check out. They're saying we owe for everything." I said nothing. "Mom, please say something. Sandra's trying to talk to the manager, but he's threatening to call the police." I let her words hang in the air, slow and heavy. "Well," I finally said, "that does sound stressful." "Mom." Her voice rose. "You don't understand, we can't even get gas money home." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, setting my cup down gently. "I just think it's time you understood what consequences feel like." There was a long pause. Then softer, "You really don't care if we're stranded?" I looked out the window again. The sky was bright and cloudless, the kind of day that dares you to stay angry. "No, honey," I said quietly, "I care very much. That's why I'm letting you figure it out yourselves." I hung up before she could reply. The rest of the day moved slowly, the way days do when you know something's happening elsewhere but you're not there to see it. I vacuumed. I folded laundry. I even took a walk to the corner store to pick up milk and a magazine. Mrs. Reynolds, the clerk, smiled as I approached the counter. "You look peaceful today," she said. "That's rare around here." I laughed softly. Maybe I finally learned to let things be. When I got home, I watered the plants on the porch. The hydrangeas were starting to bloom, deep blue, heavy-headed. I thought about how long it takes for something to grow, how much patience it requires to get it right. Then I thought of my daughter rushing through life, expecting everything handed to her. Maybe patience was the only thing she'd never learned. That night I slept soundly. No tossing. No guilt. The next morning I woke to a voicemail from Sandra. Her voice was shaky, desperate. "Mary, it's me. They've locked us out of the room. They said the charges were reversed and we need to settle the bill immediately. Emily's crying. I don't know what to do. Please, we're family. Don't do this." I played it twice. Then deleted it. There was something freeing about silence, about not responding. It felt like finally setting down a burden you'd carried too long. I made pancakes for breakfast, drizzled them with the maple syrup I'd been saving since last fall. Tasted sweeter that morning. By afternoon the guilt tried to creep in. It always does. That little voice that says maybe you went too far. Maybe you should call. I almost picked up the phone. Then I remembered the empty key hook, the missing card, the forged signature. The sound of Sandra laughing through the receiver. I put the phone back down. Some lessons are only learned the hard way. Later that day I ran into my neighbor Ruth at the mailbox. She was in her 70s, small and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could read a whole situation from one glance. "You look lighter," she said, tucking her mail under her arm. "Maybe I am." "Did you finally tell your daughter no?" she asked with a knowing grin. I blinked. "How did you?" "Oh, honey," Ruth said, laughing. "Everyone in this neighborhood knows how much you've done for that girl. Boundaries aren't mean, you know. They're just overdue." We stood there a moment, the two of us in the soft heat of the afternoon, cicadas humming in the distance. He was right. Boundaries weren't cruelty. They were clarity. When I went back inside, I felt lighter still. That evening, my landline rang again. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. It was a man's voice, polite, strained. "Mrs. Morrison? This is Greg from Ocean View Resort. I'm afraid there's a bit of a situation with your account." "I'm aware," I said. "And it's been reported to my bank." He hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. We've been informed. The two women here claim to be family. They, don't have another form of payment." "I see. We can't release their car either," he added. "It's registered in your name." I almost smiled. "Then I suppose you'll need to keep it safe until I decide what to do." There was a pause. "Understood, ma'am." When I hung up, I sat in the dim light of the living room for a long moment, the quiet pressing close around me. The television murmured softly in the background. "An old rerun of Murder, She Wrote." I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. I didn't feel triumphant. It felt, still, like I'd finally stepped out of a long, tiring cycle of being taken for granted. 2 days passed before I heard from them again. This time it was a text from Emily. "We're home. Please don't be mad. We just wanted a little break. I didn't think you'd overreact like this." Overreact. The word sat bitter on my tongue. I didn't reply. Instead, I took the spare key, the real spare key, and went outside to check the mailbox. The air was cool and smelled of rain. For the first time in years, the driveway looked perfectly fine without the car there. Peaceful even. Inside, I made tea and sat by the window thinking about everything I'd given, and everything I'd allowed. Maybe this wasn't revenge after all. Maybe it was the slow correction of a pattern that had gone on too long. So I wasn't done. Not yet. I had one more thing to take care of. That night, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small blue notebook. The one where I kept old receipts, passwords, and notes from years past. In the back, there was an envelope marked, "Emily, 2019. Inside was a copy of the car title. My name still the only one on it. I slipped the envelope into my purse and whispered to the empty room, "Let them learn." The phone buzzed again, another call from Emily. I let it ring until it stopped. Then I turned off the lights, set my alarm for early, and went to bed. Tomorrow I'd visit the dealership. I had no intention of getting that car back. At least not for them. The next morning I woke before the alarm. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator through the walls. The house was still, filled with that soft gray quiet that comes right before sunrise. I slipped out of bed, brewed my coffee, and sat by the kitchen window. It had rained overnight. The driveway shimmered under the streetlight, small puddles catching the faint orange glow. Somewhere down the block, a delivery truck rumbled past. I could almost imagine my car parked where it used to be, that neat shape of something familiar, something that had always felt like mine. But I didn't miss it. Not really. After breakfast, I tucked the blue envelope into my purse and drove my old sedan to the dealership. The roads were damp and empty, the world not quite awake yet. The man at the counter, a polite fellow with silver hair, recognized me from years of routine maintenance visits. "Morning, Mrs. Morrison," he said with a friendly nod. "What brings you in today?" I placed the envelope on the counter. "I need to transfer a title," I said. "Car's mine, but I'd like to sell it back." He blinked. "Sell it? You just had that Porsche detailed last month. Ran beautifully." "It did," I said, keeping my voice even. "But it's not worth the trouble anymore." He nodded slowly, sensing more in my tone than I was saying. "I can handle that for you. Might take a few days." "That's fine." When I left, the morning air felt clearer somehow. The sky had opened to pale blue, and the rain had washed everything clean. By the time I got home, the quiet was gone. 2 cars were parked out front, an old minivan and a rental I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened. They were back. I parked a little further down the street and sat for a moment, watching. The front door opened and there was Emily, messy hair, red eyes, pacing on the porch. Sandra sat on the steps beside her, arms folded tight. I stepped out of my car slowly, keys in hand. Emily spotted me first. "Mom," she shouted, storming down the steps. "What did you do?" Her voice cracked, sharp and trembling at once. She looked sunburned, tired, not the glamorous, carefree woman from the beach photos. Sandra followed behind her, slower, her mouth already set in that defensive line she's worn since childhood. What did I do? I said, locking my car. I think the better question is what you did. Oh, don't start with that, Sandra snapped. You embarrassed us. Do you know how humiliating that was? We had to explain to the hotel manager that our own sister wouldn't help us. I walked past them, calm and steady. And whose card were you using to book that hotel? Emily stepped in front of me, blocking the path to the door. Mom, I said I was sorry. We just needed a break. We were gonna pay you back. I stopped, met her eyes. You forged my signature. You took my car without asking. You drained my savings for a vacation I wasn't even invited to. Her lip trembled. It wasn't like that. Sandra muttered something under her breath, something about control and drama. I turned to her. You encouraged her, didn't you? Her eyes darted away. I told her you wouldn't mind. You've always been generous. I nodded. That's the problem. Inside, the house still smelled faintly of lavender and lemon cleaner. Everything was neat, untouched, exactly how I'd left it, except for the tension hanging thick in the air behind me. Emily followed me into the kitchen. Mom, please. I know it looks bad, but... It doesn't look bad, I said quietly, pouring water into the kettle. It is bad. She sank into a chair, face in her hands. You could have called. You could have just told us you were upset. I set 2 tea bags on the counter. I could have, I said. But then you'd have talked me out of it. Again. Sandra came in, arms crossed. So what now, Mary? You want to teach us a lesson? You've made your point. Not yet, I said. The kettle began to hiss softly. The sound filled the silence between us. Emily looked up, tears streaking her face. We didn't mean to hurt you. I met her eyes. Intentions don't erase actions. Her voice broke. We're family. That word, I said, turning off the kettle, has been used like a weapon in this house for far too long. I made tea for myself. They didn't get any. Sandra paced the living room while Emily stared at the floor. Every few minutes one of them tried to speak to smooth things over, but the words fell flat. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just let them sit in it. The discomfort, the silence, the realization that for once I wasn't stepping in to make it better. Finally, Emily stood. We'll go, she said softly. I just need the car keys. I sipped my tea. Which car? She blinked. Mine, I mean yours. The Porsche. Oh, that's not yours anymore, I said, setting down the cup. What do you mean? I sold it this morning. Sandra froze. You did what? I went to the dealership. Signed the papers. They'll finalize it by Monday. Emily stared at me like she didn't understand the words. But that's my car. I mean, you said I could use it whenever. I said you could borrow it, I corrected. Borrowing and taking are different things. Her shoulders sagged. So you really did all this just to hurt us? No, I said simply. I did it to stop you from hurting me. For a moment no one spoke. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall and the faint whistle of the kettle cooling. Then Sandra broke. You've changed, she said bitterly. You used to be kind. I looked at her, really looked. No, Sandra. I used to be afraid of being unkind. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I walked past them to the hallway and opened the front door. You should both go. You'll figure something out. Emily hesitated, tears welling again. Mom, we don't have anywhere to stay. Just let us stay here tonight. Please. I looked at her and for a brief second I felt that old tug of compassion. The same one that used to undo every boundary I tried to set. But it faded. Slowly, quietly, like the last embers of a dying fire. You have each other, I said softly. You'll manage. They left without another word. I watched from the doorway as they climbed into the minivan, both too proud to look back. The engine coughed, sputtered, then started. They drove off, tires splashing through the puddles left from the night before. When the taillights disappeared around the corner, I shut the door and leaned against it. The house was silent again. But this time it didn't feel empty. It felt mine. That evening Ruth stopped by with a loaf of banana bread. I saw the cars out front earlier, she said gently. Everything all right? I smiled. Everything's finally all right. We sat on the porch for a while, sipping tea as the sun dipped low. She told me about her garden, how the tomatoes were coming in late this year. Normal talk, soft grounding. After she left, I brought the bread inside and cut myself a slice. The house smelled warm again. Peaceful. And yet, as I cleaned the kitchen, I noticed something. The faint indent on the table where Emily used to rest her elbows. The mark on the wall from when Sandra bumped it moving furniture last Christmas. Ghosts of family moments still lingering. I touched the edge of the table, whispering to the empty room, I hope you both learned something from this. Just as I turned off the lights for bed, my phone buzzed. A single new message. We're sorry. We just got to Sandra's place. I wish it hadn't ended like this. Love you, Mom. I stared at the words. For a long time I didn't know whether to reply. Finally I typed 3 words back. Love you too. Then I set the phone on the nightstand and turned out the light. The air felt lighter. My chest freer. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the first step toward something that might become it. Still, as I drifted to sleep, one thought stayed with me. Love doesn't mean letting people walk over you. Sometimes love is just standing still, and letting others finally face the reflection they created. Morning light crept through the curtains, soft and golden. I blinked awake, the edges of a dream fading. Something about a beach, laughter, and my younger self waving from the shore. For the first time in months, I'd slept through the night. I sat up slowly, letting the quiet settle around me. The clock read 7:43. My phone lay on the nightstand, still where I'd left it after replying to Emily's message. No new texts. No missed calls. Just silence. The peaceful kind, not the lonely kind. I brewed coffee, the same ritual every morning. The smell filled the kitchen, comforting in its steadiness. As I reached for the mug, I noticed a thin white envelope slid halfway under the door. My name written on it. Mom, in my daughter's handwriting. I crouched down, picked it up and turned it over. No return address, no postage. They must have come by early, too nervous to ring the bell. My heart thudded once hard. I carried it to the table and set it down beside my mug. For a while I just stared at it. When I finally opened it, the paper smelled faintly of her perfume, the same floral scent she'd worn since college. Mom, we're sorry. Sandra helped me write this. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just desperate for a break. You work so hard and never take time to live, and we thought maybe you'd understand if we did. I know we crossed a line, but we're still family. Please call me when you're ready. Love, Emily. The words blurred as I read them. It wasn't quite an apology, more like a plea disguised as one. There was no mention of the forged signature, the stolen car, or the lies. Just excuses wrapped up in sentiment. Still, something inside me softened. Maybe not forgiveness, but recognition. That old maternal pull again, the part of me that still wanted to fix things even now. I folded the letter neatly and placed it beside the fruit bowl. Not in the trash, not on display, just somewhere in between. By mid-morning I found myself dusting the bookshelves, a chore I hadn't done in weeks. I wasn't sure if it was nerves or restlessness. The sound of the feather duster brushing over the old spines was oddly soothing. Each title brought back a memory. Cookbooks from when I still hosted family dinners, gardening guides from the years before my knees started to ache. I paused on a framed photo. Emily at 10 years old, holding a seashell up to her ear, grinning. Her hair was tangled, her nose sunburned, but her eyes were bright. That same child still lived somewhere inside her. Maybe I'd just forgotten to see it. A knock startled me. I turned, heart racing. Through the window, I saw Ruth standing on the porch with her cardigan pulled tight against the wind. When I opened the door, she smiled. You've got mail again, she said, holding up a small stack. Figured I'd save you the walk to the box. Thank you, I said, stepping aside. Come in for a bit. Coffee. She nodded. Just a small cup. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd read the letter hours before. Ruth glanced at the folded paper beside the bowl. From them. I nodded. She didn't press for details. She just sipped her coffee and said softly, you know, sometimes people confuse remorse with regret. One's about you, the other's about them. That stayed with me. After she left, I walked to the window and watched her cross the street, her small frame steady against the wind. I envied that steadiness, the kind that comes from years of knowing who you are and refusing to bend for anyone. The phone rang just after lunch. Mom. Emily's voice, small, cautious. I didn't answer right away. I just let the silence stretch. Did you get my letter? She asked finally. I did, I said. And? It was thoughtful, I said carefully, but not honest. She sighed. Mom, what do you want me to say? That I was wrong? Fine. I was wrong. We shouldn't have taken the car. We shouldn't have used your card. But you freezing the account, that was cruel. There it was, the deflection, the half-truth. I could almost see her pacing on the other end, her words tumbling out fast, just like when she was a teenager caught sneaking in past curfew. Cruel, I repeated, tasting the word. You think holding you accountable is cruel? I think punishing your family isn't you, she said. It's not the mom I remember. I felt a sharp ache in my chest, not from anger but from something deeper. Loss. Maybe that's because the mom you remember let everyone else's comfort matter more than her own. There was a pause, heavy and uncertain. Then she said, quieter, we just wanted to feel close to you again. That's all. I swallowed hard. You had every chance to call. To visit. To ask. I know, she whispered. I know. The line crackled, a long fragile pause before she said, can I stop by? Just to talk. My first instinct was to say no. But something in her tone, that small trembling edge, kept me from it. Tomorrow, I said finally. Afternoon. The next day I cleaned the house again, not because it needed it but because I needed something to do with my hands. By 1 o'clock I'd polished the table twice and straightened the curtains 3 times. At 2 I heard her car pull into the driveway. Not the Porsche, of course. A borrowed sedan. The sound of her shoes on the porch made my heart race. When I opened the door she looked smaller somehow. Hair tied back, no makeup, a nervous smile tugging at her lips. Hi, Mom. Come in, I said. She stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning the living room like she was expecting it to have changed. I brought you something, she said, holding out a paper bag. Inside was a box of chamomile tea. My favorite brand. Thought you might like it. I smiled faintly. Thank you. We sat at the table, the air thick with everything unsaid. So, I began. You said you wanted to talk. She nodded, twisting her hands together. I wanted to apologize. Properly this time. I waited. I was selfish, she said. I thought because you've always been there for me you always would be. I didn't think about how it must have felt. Losing Dad, being alone in this house, working so much. I guess I just wanted to feel like we still had fun together. Her eyes welled up. But I went about it all wrong. And Sandra, she didn't mean to make it worse. She just... Stop, I said gently. This isn't about Sandra. It's about you. She nodded, biting her lip. I know. For a moment I saw the little girl again, the one who used to sit at this same table, swinging her legs, promising she'd never grow up and move away. I forgive you for the trip, I said slowly. But trust, that's not something I can hand back like car keys. You'll have to earn that. Her eyes shimmered. I understand. She reached across the table but I didn't take her hand. Not yet. After she left, I found myself staring at the teacup she'd used. A faint lipstick mark on the rim, soft pink against the white porcelain. I washed it carefully, then set it upside down on the drying rack. That evening, as the sun slipped behind the trees, I took a short walk to clear my head. The air smelled of pine and distant rain. At the end of the block, Ruth was kneeling in her garden, trimming her roses. Everything all right? She called when she saw me. I nodded. I think so. But apologies are funny things. Sometimes they're more about the person giving them than the one receiving. She smiled knowingly. That's why you listen to the tone, not the words. I chuckled softly. You always know what to say. He shrugged. Age has its perks. We stood there a while watching the light fade. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Later that night I went through an old box in the attic. The one where I kept letters, photographs, and scraps of a life built on compromises. I found a Mother's Day card from years ago. Emily's handwriting again, younger and surer. You're my hero, Mom. Someday I'll take care of you like you take care of me. I traced the letters with my finger and smiled, though it hurt a little. Promises, like people, change shape over time. Before going to bed, I placed that old card next to the new letter on the kitchen table. Side by side, like 2 versions of the same story. One written in innocence, the other in consequence. And as I turned off the light, I realized something. The apology hadn't healed the wound, but it had stopped the bleeding. Tomorrow would bring its own reckonings. But tonight at least the house was quiet. And that was enough. Tomorrow did come, bright, almost too bright. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, laying long golden stripes across the floorboards. The air held that faint chill of early spring, the kind that still smells of winter but hints at warmth trying to return. I sat up slowly, joints creaking the way they always did in the morning, and reached for my robe. The house was still. No ticking clock this time, no hum of the refrigerator. Just silence. Pure, complete. For once I didn't rush to fill it. I brewed tea instead of coffee. Chamomile. The box Emily had brought me. The scent rose soft and floral, soothing in a way I hadn't let myself feel in weeks. I carried the cup to the window seat, where sunlight painted the cushions pale gold. From there I could see the street, quiet except for a mail truck idling near the corner. I sipped slowly, breathing in peace like something I'd forgotten how to taste. On the table beside me sat the two letters, the old Mother's Day card and the recent apology. The past and present staring each other down. I let my fingers brush both, then folded them together and tied them with a piece of twine from the junk drawer. Not to keep the memories alive but to contain them, to decide finally how much space they deserved. By noon I'd decided to drive into town. There was no particular reason, just a feeling that the day needed to move, that I was ready to move with it. As I turned onto Main Street, the familiar storefronts came into view. The bakery, the thrift shop, the old clock tower that hadn't worked in years. I parked in front of the cafe Ruth and I used to visit after church. When I stepped inside, the bell above the door jingled. The smell of cinnamon rolls and brewed coffee wrapped around me like a memory. "Mary, haven't seen you in a while," the barista said, smiling. "I've been taking care of a few things," I said. She nodded knowingly, poured me a cup and gestured to my favorite seat near the window. Halfway through my coffee, I heard laughter from the other side of the room, familiar, hesitant laughter that made my heart jump. I looked up. Emily stood near the counter, holding a paper bag and talking quietly to Ruth. Our eyes met across the room. For a second neither of us moved. Then she smiled, small, cautious, like a child testing the water before diving in. I raised my hand in a little wave. She hesitated, then walked over. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. "Go ahead." She sat across from me, her hands folded around her cup. "I didn't think I'd run into you here." I could say the same. We both laughed softly. It wasn't the strained kind from before. It sounded real. "I've been staying with Aunt Sandra," she said after a moment. "It's been rough. She's been trying to sell her condo, but the market's awful." I nodded. "That sounds difficult." She took a breath, like she was about to confess something heavier. "I got a job. Just part-time, but it's a start. At the same office I used to work for. They needed help with accounts." "That's good," I said. "I'm proud of you." She looked down at her cup, her voice softer now. "You know, when you froze the account I was so angry. I thought you were punishing us. But the truth is, it made me realize how dependent I'd become. On you, on excuses, on everything." I didn't speak. I just let her words hang in the air. She looked up again, eyes glassy. "I needed that wake-up call. And I hate that it took losing your trust to see it." I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. "Sometimes losing something is the only way to understand what it's worth." She nodded, blinking fast. The bell above the door jingled again. Sandra walked in. Her expression froze when she saw us. She hesitated at the entrance, then came over slowly. "Didn't expect to see the two of you together," she said. "We're just talking," I said. Sandra glanced at the empty chair, then back at me. "Mind if I join?" I gestured for her to sit. For a moment none of us spoke. 3 women, 3 cups of coffee, 3 different versions of the same hurt sitting at one table. Sandra was the first to break the silence. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I thought I was protecting Emily from you being hard on her. But I see now I was really protecting myself from feeling guilty." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was no performance in it this time, no edge of self-pity. "You've always been the strong one, Mary," she continued. "The one who handled things. I guess I got used to letting you do that. It's easy to resent the person who never seems to need anyone." That last line caught me off guard. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the fatigue etched around her mouth, the faint tremor in her hands. She wasn't my rival anymore. She was just tired. "We all have our ways of surviving," I said softly. "Mine was control. Yours was avoidance." She gave a small, rueful smile. and hers was pretending everything was fine. Emily laughed through her tears. We're quite the trio, aren't we? Yes, I said. But maybe we're learning. We talked for nearly 2 hours. About everything and nothing. About Dad, about old summers, about the silly fights that never should have mattered. Somewhere in that conversation something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but space. The kind that allows forgiveness to exist. When we finally stood to leave, Sandra said, "You know, Mom's house always felt more like home than mine ever did. Maybe we could come by this weekend? Help with the garden, maybe cook dinner?" I thought for a moment. "You can come by," I said. "But you bring the groceries." Emily grinned. "Deal." As they left, I watched through the cafe window. For the first time, their shoulders didn't slump under the weight of entitlement or guilt. They just looked lighter. That evening, I tidied up the kitchen, humming softly to myself. When I went to the window to close the curtains, I noticed the first daffodils blooming by the mailbox, bright and stubborn against the chill. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to fix everything, to smooth every edge, to keep the peace at my own expense. But peace, I'd learned, wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the reward for surviving it. I set the table for one. My dinner simple but satisfying. Baked chicken, roasted vegetables, and a small glass of wine. Halfway through, I heard a soft knock at the door. When I opened it, a delivery driver stood there holding a small box wrapped in brown paper. "Delivery for Mary Morrison," he said. I signed for it and brought it inside. The return label read, "Emily Morrison." Inside the box was a framed photo, the one I thought I'd lost, from years ago. The three of us standing by the lake, laughing, sunburned, wind in our hair. Beneath it, a note. "For everything you taught me, even when I didn't want to learn. Love, Emily." Tears filled my eyes, quiet and clean. I set the frame on the mantel and stepped back. The picture wasn't perfect, slightly faded, edges bent, but that made it honest. Later that night, as I settled into bed, I thought about the road that had led here. Every quiet morning, every painful conversation, every small act of courage I didn't know I still had in me. Revenge, I realized, hadn't been about payback. It had been about reclaiming something they'd taken long before the money or the car. My dignity. My sense of self. And in standing firm, I hadn't just changed them. I changed myself. As the house slipped into darkness, the wind brushed gently against the windows. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once, then went quiet. I closed my eyes and let the stillness settle around me, warm and full. Tomorrow the garden would need tending. The daffodils would keep blooming, stubborn as ever. Life in its ordinary rhythm would go on, not perfect, not without scars, but whole. And that, finally, was enough. Peace wasn't a gift they gave me, it was the price I made them pay, and I earned every penny of it. If this story moved something inside you, hit subscribe. There's more, real stories of heartbreak, revenge, and quiet strength, waiting for you here.